Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Concordia University's Space. Thank you for joining us for today's event, the next installment in our ongoing series, taking a closer look behind some of the closed doors into spaces and projects that you might not know about happening here at Concordia. And today, Space takes a closer look at the Future Building Lab. But before that, to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from Space and from the Loyola campus, and we are located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. Here at Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge. We co-create daily activities, events that examine research questions and projects, things happening across the university. We're running this, as you can see, we're running this event as a live stream Zoom meeting from both Loyola and from Space. So anyone joining us via Zoom, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. We'll see if we can get them over to Daniel. And those of you here in the space, the same thing, raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you if you have any questions. Okay, I'm now very interested to, well, first I'm going to introduce PhD student in building engineering here at Concordia University and our tour leader for today, Daniel Baril. Daniel, it's great to have you. And where are we today?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, we're at the Loyola campus, and welcome to the FBL, the Future Buildings Lab. As Douglas mentioned, I'm Daniel Baril, PhD student building engineering, and I'm pleased to give you guys a tour of the building. So let's go. Let's do it.
Thank you.
So basically, this building is a series of test cells. So each test cell can be representative of an office space or even its own small building on its own as well. So there's a number of experiments going on in here. And what you can see here on this facade is basically it's called semi-transparent PV. So basically what we use this is it would be like an office space, and you have these PV panels or solar cells here providing shading into the office as well, where you can still get natural daylight, but you're generating electricity. And it's a building integrated system. So it's incorporated onto the glass of the building here. So what we do, you can't tell, but in here it's very hot right now. We're getting a lot of heat gains, basically it's called, sun coming into the building. Step number one of a solar building is to have this facing south. So we get a lot of sun in here during the day. So we get all these solar heat gains, which is a lot of heat coming in. So what we're doing is we're trying to reduce that. And basically what we're doing is we're pulling that air through a vent, through the top, through a duct, going into the mechanical room where we have a heat pump. And we'll come over here and you guys can see.
Hey, Daniel.
It's going.
Okay, I'll catch him.
So basically what we have is this duct, as I mentioned, coming to the top of the heat pump. So you have all this hot air coming into here. This is called our heat pump. It's kind of like a refrigerator, I guess, and is coming through here, and that heat is being stored in hot water in this tank. Okay. And then what we have is another duct, we have basically the cold air, and that's going back in and cooling the other test cell just beside there. So the idea is that we have this overheating during the day, and then we're storing that heat now. And then if you go back into that room, you can see we can heat that room with the heat that we got during the day and use it at nighttime. So basically we have a piping system in the floor here. It's called a radiant floor heating system. And that hot water circulates back through these tubes into the floor, and we can heat this room at nighttime. So it's like, I guess you can call it a thermal battery or a heat battery that we have to store that heat. It's kind of a small tank, but I mean, it's more of an experiment, and you can scale that up to a larger scale onto a larger building. So
the room.
I think you might have had a question, Doug. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to let's think a little bit about the room you're in, Daniel. So it's not just the system itself is being tested, but it's also a little bit of a mock-up, maybe, as how it would exist in the real world, in terms of how it would be installed on a window, how you might run piping, etc. Is that part of what you're looking at?
Yeah, exactly. It's a full scale. Like the system is like real building components. So we're using that. It's a smaller test cell. So I guess it's like, you could say, assume this to be like a standalone house on its own. And all the walls are insulated and that. But it's real equipment that can be used. Like it's readily available on the market right now, this equipment. So it's like basically we're applying this using equipment on the market and to test ways to store energy. But what we're doing here is heat. We're storing heat. We're in a cold climate where a major component of the energy bill is heat in Montreal. And we'll get into it a little bit later. I'm studying more for Arctic applications, where that's a huge part of it. About 80% of the energy bill goes for heat. Well, we'll go into that a bit more, I guess, when we get to test cell number 2. So, yeah.
Great.
Okay, so shall we go to number 3?
Let's do
go
it.
to number 3.
Okay, come on out. It's a little bit tight in here, so it's but we'll figure it out.
Make it.
So there's 4 test cells in here. Basically, these 2 are connected together. And we'll go in here and we'll see the other side of this. So test cell number 4. It's a little bit cooler in here. As I mentioned, from that heat pump, we have a duct running up to the ceiling over here, and the cool air is coming into this side of the room. Ideally, when that runs long enough, the air will mix in both rooms. So it's the basic concept. We're testing the concept. Nobody's living in here or anything like that. So
It's not anyone's office.
yeah, it's like it's simulating an office, basically. You can tell, like, sometimes you're in an office, like a Concordia downtown, and some of them are facing south, and they get very hot. But then what happens is you put the air conditioning on in there, but there's other parts of the building that need heat as well. So you can kind of redistribute the heat to other parts of the building where it's needed. I guess you call it like a perimeter. This is a perimeter office, and then you have in the core of the building where there's no windows, where it's more colder, and you can redistribute that heat. Like there's times at the EV building where they need to air condition in February, where it's minus 15 outside. It's a little bit ridiculous. So you can have situations like that where the core of the building needs heat, and then the perimeter or whatever you need cooling. So it's kind of use it more smartly. So
Yeah, it's, you were mentioning before another scenario in which you're trying to like gain energy and heat and then transfer it to another time. You were mentioning on the poster behind you here.
Yeah, exactly. So part of this is to increase the building energy flexibility. It's called the BEFI. So basically the peak in Quebec of energy use is in the morning during the rush hour, I guess, when everybody's getting ready for work, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then also in the evening from about 4 until 8 p.m. when everybody gets home and cooking supper and all that kind of stuff. So the idea is with solar, the peak of solar production is right at noon, solar noon, I guess. So the idea is it doesn't really match up with the energy load. So the idea is to be able to store enough energy to get it to go to reduce the peak. So what's happening if you have a peak, basically the power generation system, the hydro dams and whatever else needs to meet that peak. But what happens is that peak only happens for a small portion of the day. So the idea is to try and store some of that solar energy to reduce that peak. So you take the peak that happens with solar at noon and you can store a little bit of that heat. You also have batteries and whatnot, but we're looking more for heat in this situation, and you can use it more to reduce the peak at that whatever evening rush hour, I guess, kind of idea. So it's that's the idea. You get more flexibility in your building.
Absolutely.
But then we were talking earlier where you could scale that up even more seasonal if you wanted to. Really, you could have like a geothermal system where you have a heat pump and you're storing that heat in the ground, and you could store that in there for months. Where you're getting like heat in the summertime, you have that heat pump, you store the heat in the ground, and then you could use that in the winter time to reduce peaks.
Right.
Now, it's difficult to say like, oh, we're going to get a complete net zero energy building, but it's to reduce that peaks. The peaks is like the main thing that we're trying to reduce. It's more realistic of an approach to do.
Daniel, in the middle of that room, it looked like there was a sensor or something in the Can you tell us a little bit about some of the equipment that you're using to kind of measure what's happening?
Yeah, so that one in the middle of this globe here is it's a globe thermometer, it's called, basically to measure the mean radiant temperature, mean as in average temperature, I guess. So I was kind of explaining a little bit before, it's used to measure like the radiative heat transfer. Now, I had to explain a little bit, there's like 3 forms of heat transfer. There's the conductive, which is going through like a wall, I guess, convective, which is kind of going through the air, like it's going through the wind and the air, and then radiative, which is a bit more abstract, but basically it just goes from the heat source directly to another source. So the idea is it measures that. So what I was saying is that if you're sitting at this desk in the winter and you have like short sleeves on, even if the room is at like, let's say 22 degrees Celsius, you can feel the cold outside. If it's minus 15 or minus 10 outside, you can feel the cold glass. Now, what's happening there is that you have radiative heat transfer from the glass, and that's how you can feel it. So you can't just measure the air temperature. You need to have the special globe thermometer to measure that. So that's what that does. The other things that we have is a data logger. Basically, you're logging whatever your points. And then there was a study here as well for daylighting. So there's a small sensor over here measuring the daylighting at the work plane. And the other interesting thing in this cell was also these blinds that we have. So basically, they're embedded blinds into the window. And what we have on here is called a bifacial semi-transparent PV. So you can generate solar electricity from both sides of the panel. So outside the sun shines on it, but also on the other face of it, you can generate electricity there. Now what happens is during the day, you get a lot of sun coming in, too much glare. So you go over, you close your blinds to block the sun from coming in, too much glare. Now what happens is the sun's gonna reflect off these blinds onto the back of this solar panel. So what's gonna happen is you reduce the sun coming in, but also you're generating extra solar electricity by this reflection onto the back of the panel. So what we're trying to do is maximize our solar installations here as much as possible. So a lot of people, you wanna buy solar panels, you throw them on a building, which is a great initiative, but it's not always the wisest. You're not getting the most bang for your buck. There's a lot of embodied energy goes into a solar panel, precious metals, all these different things. So we want to be aware of that and not just put it onto a building. We want to engineer it and try and get maximize the performance of the solar panels. So we're not only generating electricity, we're trying to maximize that as much as possible, but also recover heat. Where we're in a cold climate, and then we'll go into a little bit more for the Arctic, where heat is is a major player, where it's like 80% of your energy goes to heat. So we want to try and maximize that, get the most out of our solar panels.
You mentioned the Arctic.
Yeah.
I understand you have a very specific focus on retaining this heat. Do you want to show us what you're up to in the test cell next door?
Yeah, let's go. All right, so let's move over here, and then we'll go down to test cell number 2. So it's more of the project I'm working on, and maybe eventually we'll go to the solar simulator where I have a prototype for this as well. So yeah, test cell number 2. And welcome. So what we have here, I guess this system, is called the BIPVT, the Building Integrated Photovoltaic / Thermal Collector, which basically what we're doing is that we'll see on the outside, and when we do a tour outside, is basically we have a solar panel out there, and what we're doing is generating solar electricity, but then we're also recovering some heat. So I don't know if you want me to do the poster? So basically what we have here is a cross-section of our system, and what we have is basically a solar panel on here. Now, a solar panel is an electronic device. So it's like a computer. So the colder it is, the better it's going to operate. So you have a fan in your computer, it's blowing off heat, and it's more efficient. Same thing for a solar panel. You want the solar panel to be as cool as possible. So basically you need to have a 25 millimeter or 1 inch gap or so behind it for air to pass through so it doesn't overheat, and it operates better. Now, normally what happens is air comes in through this cavity, and then you just waste that waste heat is rejected to the air. Now, okay, that's okay, it's making it work better, but we want to try and be smart about it. And in these cold climates, especially the Arctic, there is no waste heat. So what we do is basically the air is coming in through, we close the top of that, and we bring it into the building to preheat the fresh air for the building. So you can see over here we have this system called a heat recovery ventilator, an HRV. Basically, this is an air exchanger bringing in fresh air for the building. So I was explaining a little bit in the background, we're building engineering, and we focus a little bit for like high performance buildings in the Arctic. So basically one of the rules to make an energy efficient building is to make the building as airtight as possible. You seal up all the windows, all the doors, all the small unintentional openings, all the little cracks, you seal it all up nice and airtight. But then what happens is you end up having not enough fresh air in the building. So you probably are aware in the Arctic, there's a lot of problems with overcrowding, lack of fresh air, all this humidity and moisture. So you want to bring in fresh air. So that's what we're doing with this. You're bringing in fresh air with this heat recovery ventilator. Now, the other issue is you have the cold, the stale air from the building being exhausted through this system, and you're bringing in the fresh air. So there's kind of a heat exchange going on. Now what happens is when those streams meet, the stale air is moist, you end up getting condensation in there. Yeah, and we end up getting condensation. Now what happens is in the Arctic, that condensation inside the unit freezes.
Freezes, yes.
That's it. So that's bad. And then what happens is this system goes into recirculation mode. So basically you're not getting fresh air. It has to go into recirculate for maybe 20 minutes or so. And during that time, you're not getting fresh air for the occupants, which is not good. Now, the idea with this system is to preheat that fresh air to reduce that frosting. So during the day, you can preheat your fresh air going into this by about 20 degrees. So instead of bringing in air that's minus 20, you're bringing in air that's 0. And depending on this system, it'll start to freeze from, let's say, minus 10 to minus 5 or so, something like that. So you want to get above that threshold with this system. So you can use it for a house, or I mean, we also studied it for Arctic building schools. So it works quite well for a school like that. And after COVID now, the fresh air requirements in these schools went way up where you need to bring 100% fresh air. So they're always bringing in this minus 20 air, and that takes a lot of energy. And basically in the Arctic, all the heating comes from diesel, which is a lot of diesel fuel and all these things, which is really bad. So we want to reduce that as much as possible. So we want to preheat that fresh air, and you can preheat it by about 20 degrees or so.
And so you're, Daniel, you're reducing the amount of time that the air exchanger has to stop and basically defrost itself by heating the air on the way in. Yeah.
And then normally what they do, they'll have like a heating coil installed into the system to preheat that air to prevent frosting if they really do it properly. But that's still powered by like the boiler with the diesel or whatever burner on it. So we're reducing that energy that diesel boiler has to run. And then the other option is what we could do is reduct this, which I'd actually really like to do, is reduct this to our heat pump that I showed you before. So we can store that heat in there. And then there's like the heat pump. You have this thing called the COP. It's basically a coefficient of performance. And basically it's a multiplier. So the warmer the air coming into the heat pump, the more multiplier you get. So let's just say you have 1 unit of electricity coming in.
Okay.
And then you have that multiplier, which goes from like, let's say 2 to 4. You can get like 2 to 4 units of heat out of it. So it's like this magic whatever device that you can multiply the amount of energy going in. So that's it. So like I said, you're getting solar electricity, but then also you're getting heat. So basically, let's go back to this image over here. Let me do a little breakdown for you guys. So you have your solar panels on here. You have the sun. Basically, the sun's shining on the solar panel. About 15 to 20% of that sun's energy on the solar panel goes to electricity. Okay? There's maybe 5% gets reflected, but the remainder of it turns to heat. So what we're trying to do is recover that heat, and you can get about 25, maybe even 30% of that to heat. So instead of just getting 15 to 20, you're looking at like 40 to 50% efficiency you're getting out of it. So you're using a lot more of this sun's energy. Same thing on the Arctic as well. You can get reflectance off the snow and all that. So the idea is to maximize this. So we're basically doubling the useful energy you can get out of these solar panels. So that's a lot better than basically the 15% that you have. And we're looking at trying to maximize this. And like I said, squeeze as much as we can out of it, because we know there's a lot of embodied energy and all these different things that go into that. So we want to keep that in account, but try and maximize these systems. So if you do install these systems on the building, we're going to try and make sure you get the most out of it. So,
okay.
Now, oh, sorry, go ahead, Doug.
No, Bertie, go ahead.
I was just going to say, now that you've seen a little bit of the science behind it, maybe we can go outside and take a look at the solar panels themselves.
Oh yeah, good idea.
Yeah, that's the other side of it. All right, let's go.
So you can see the multiple test cells that we took a peek at earlier.
Yeah, there's many disciplines in here as well. There's also electrical engineering team that's working in here.
Daniel, that was one of my questions for you. How many people or how many projects? I don't know the exact number, but just in general, like how many people are working there at any given moment?
It's off and on, I guess. A lot of times, like we're collecting data. So I mean, somebody will set up their test, and then they collect data over the seasons. So that's a little bit different in here. What we do is we have like real weather conditions. So you want to see how it performs throughout the year. So you want to test with all the different seasons and the fluctuations with the weather and all that type of stuff. So we have let's say 2 or 3 building engineering students, but then we have about 4 or 5 electrical engineering students as well. So
Okay.
there's a mechanical room and an electrical room beside that where we have a battery bank, lithium ion batteries in there as well to store some of the electricity coming off the solar panels. We just had a hydrogen system put in there as well, which is pretty cool. That's getting set up now. So we can store some of I guess, the solar electricity in hydrogen and use that. So that's pretty cool.
And what would you use this stored electricity for?
Yeah, so that's it. It can be used by the building, but another cool thing that we have out here is for electric vehicle charging. So we have an electric vehicle charger on the side of the building. We can pull an electric vehicle up here, and basically you can charge your solar, your electric vehicle with solar energy. Basically, you're getting from that. And then also what happens is if there's an emergency situation, you have an ice storm or whatever it is, a power failure, you can power the building with the electric vehicle as well. So it gives you a little bit extra batteries. We have some batteries inside, but also you have extra batteries with this electric vehicle. So that's another feature of it. There's a study with that. Grid interactions, they're selling it back to the grid, battery storage, all these different things like that to try and maximize that and reduce these peaks. You can increase the building flexibility as well with the thing. So I mentioned you want to shift the peak of noon to match up with the loads that you have in the evening or in the morning and those type of things. So we look into how to flex it around like that a little bit too. So it's a big part of it, and you can go really deep. The electrical engineers really have like their hands full with that. So
Incredible. Oh,
so yeah, welcome. This is the.
oh, here you go.
As I
Lost you for a
mentioned
second.
before, it's building.
We might be losing you a little bit outside the building.
Created solar over here. It's got integration you have over here. So it's part of the envelope of the building. So this acts as the rain screen of the building, the UV barrier, all that. So this is the way you have on here too. So it's kind of more of I guess, a sleek design of the building. On the roof, we have racks on the roof. So eventually we're in the progress right now of having our more solar installed on there as well. And we'll be able to generate more solar electricity and charge the batteries and all that as well. You can see a couple masts on the top where we have wind turbines we're going to put on there. Right now they're being tested in the wind tunnel?
The wind tunnel.
In the EV building. So right now it's being tested there, but it's going to be installed very soon. So we're going to be testing wind energy as well. So we'll move along and I'll show you the outside of this BIPVT that I was talking to you about in cell number 2.
Okay.
So yeah,
Oh, we lost you.
Just one sec.
Oh. Hey, welcome to one of our live lab walks. Occasionally, sometimes we lose our signal. Okay, now you're back.
we're good.
One sec.
And there we are. I see you.
All right, we're back. Okay, good.
Back.
So, as I mentioned, you have the sun shining on the solar panel, okay? So basically 15 or so, 20% of that is being converted to electricity, okay? Which is good. But then we have a lot of heat, so you can't tell, but I put my hand on it, it's hot. It's hot. The sun's been shining on it for a little while now. So basically, like I mentioned before, you have like a 25 millimeter or an inch space or whatever. You can make it bigger if you want. And air is coming in through there, flowing through and passing through the top. And basically that we're just losing that heat. We're just ventilating it, I guess, to keep these nice and cool so they last longer and they work better. Now, the one that we mentioned before, preheating that fresh air, is this one over here. So if you look at the top of this, we close that top off over there. And basically we have a duct opening and that fresh air is going through and preheating that fresh air for the building. So if you put your hand here, you can kind of feel a little bit, the fresh air is coming in through there, into the building. And I can feel the airflow, and it's a little bit cooler. It's cooler as well because we're pulling that heat inside. So the idea is to, with this cooler panel, you can generate a little bit more solar electricity, but also the big thing is
Oh. Bear with us, everyone. We'll get them back. I think we lost you again. Oh, Force Beast team. We're going to hold for a few seconds. Well, interesting. There, we're back to me. Well, if you're joining us here live, you're watching it, we're just gonna wait because I think we might get them back. I don't know. We'll give it a couple minutes. Jack speaking. There we go. We can spotlight there. We need some kind of waiting room music, while we get reconnected to Loyola campus. See if we we're working behind the scenes here to see if we can get that connection back. Maybe it was a battery failure. We should have plugged into the building itself. We should play some spooky Halloween music to hold us over here. Well,
strange in the neighborhood. Who you gonna call?
I don't know if there's any Ghostbusters fans listening into this downtime, but I would have asked Daniel some questions about the containment unit in Ghostbusters. It seems like kind of like a building energy type. There would have been some building engineering students developing that. Oh, look, we're back.
All right, we back?
Okay, I think we're back. Can you hear us? Can you see us?
I can hear you. Yeah, we were just talking about the containment unit in Ghostbusters to filling time because I figured there was probably got to be some building engineering working on that too. Okay, Daniel, we got you back.
So where did we drop off at? Yeah.
I think our connection is still a bit sketchy, but while I have
the
you here,
connection's not great. We're outside.
Birdie, I'm just gonna say goodbye, and I want to thank Daniel for showing us around the future building lab. I don't know if you got that,
No problem,
Daniel, but
anytime.
thank you. Okay, thanks again. Thank you for everyone for joining us here. It was great to see the future building lab. I hope we can return and see maybe when the wind turbines are installed. It would be great to come back and see that moment. And Daniel, I appreciate you showing us around. It's great to hear more about your work. We're going to close things up here. We're going to close up our Zoom and a live stream, but this remains available on our YouTube channel. And I strongly suggest everyone revisit and share that. And I wish everyone a great afternoon and happy Halloween. Daniel, I want to ask you about the containment unit and Ghostbusters next time. Okay, bye.